It's working. Just speak into it. Direct knowledge. Actually, the text doesn't really explain the difference, but it's just that direct knowledge. There are suttas which say that direct knowledge is characteristic of somebody also on the stage of a trainee. It's characteristic both of those who are trainees, from stream enterer, once returner, non-returner, as well as arhats. Whereas full knowledge or full understanding is distinctive of the arhat. Probably you could say direct knowledge would be, let me just see if the text gives some definition or explanation. For direct knowledge? No, direct knowledge is abhinya. So that is, the base or stem is nya, based on the root nya, to know, knowledge. And then abhi suggests superiority, like superior knowledge. Whereas parinya, it's also based on the stem, it's based on nya, not knowledge, but pari suggests fullness. Yeah, for abhinya, it just says abhijanana, which is just another way of saying the same thing. And for parinya, parijanana, another way of saying the same thing. No, that's too general. There would be a more technical meaning. Maybe you could say that abhinya, probably understanding by way of by way of its actual characteristics, or knowing it by way of its, maybe through the lens of the Four Noble Truths. And then parinya, basically, it has the same sense, but the prefix pari suggests fullness, greater, more completeness. Yeah. Oh, yep. No, it's turned on by itself.
I'm sorry. So, in the cessation attainment, right? In the sutta, it's mentioned that if one is still have certain level of attachment to the attainment, then he will get reborn into the pure abode and become the non-returner.
Yeah.
So that kind of attachment, how do we classify what kind of defilement that attachment is? Is it like one of the higher fetters or hindrances, or what kind of defilement is that?
It's spoken of as Dhammachanda Dhammanandi. So it's a desire for the Dhamma and a delight in the Dhamma. So those are generally good things. As far as they go, they're good things. But because there's still that subtle desire and subtle delight based upon those meditative attainments, that will, let's say that desire for the Dhamma, that delight in the Dhamma, sort of motivates the person or mobilizes them to cut off the 5 lower fetters, but it's still some degree of attachment. And so because of that attachment, they're not able to gain complete liberation. So they take rebirth in the pure abodes. So it would be that kind of subtle delight in the Dhamma. It would be some kind of maybe a form of what's called rupa raga. There would be an attachment to a subtle attachment to form.
So they're not really defilement per se, right?
Not in the ordinary sense, but compared to the ultimate goal of liberation, it's still some degree of defilement. But it's not like the defilements that keep an ordinary person in bondage.
Thank you.
Bhante, in the earlier passage when it was talking about sort of being respectful to the Tathagata and the Tathagata's disciples, there was an example given about one of the positive people, like the person that treated the Tathagata well, or the Tathagata's disciple. It was the one who treated the Tathagata's disciples well, and I just didn't recognize the name. It started with like an N. It was like Nanga. Nanda over there.
Oh, I see, the cowherd Nanda. Okay, there's a sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya where the Buddha gives a discourse about how it's based on the simile of a log floating down a river. And the Buddha says that if the log doesn't get stuck on this shore, doesn't get stuck on the further shore, doesn't sink in the middle, doesn't get pulled down by a whirlpool, then the river will carry it down to the great ocean. And so then the Buddha says, in the same way, if a monk doesn't get attached to this shore, doesn't get attached to the further shore, doesn't sink in the middle, doesn't get pulled down by a whirlpool, he'll flow to Nibbana, drift to Nibbana, and so forth. So then after the Buddha finishes the discourse, then there's a cowherd who's standing listening to the discourse. And then Nanda says, I am one who will not get stuck on this shore, will not get stuck on the further shore, will not sink in the middle. Then he says, please, Bhante, let me go forth and receive ordination. But he still has his cows with him. Then the Buddha says to him, Nanda, return the cows, first return the cows to the owners. And then Nanda says, don't worry, there's no need for me to worry about the cows. The cows will go to the owners of their own accord because the calves are there. But then the Buddha says, he just repeats that request, Nanda, return the cows to the owners. And then Nanda returns the cows to the owner, comes back to the Buddha, and receives the ordination under the Buddha. But I don't remember any, in that sutta there's no statement about how he treated the Tathagata well, or the disciples of the Tathagata.
What about the financier's son?
I don't know who that is referring to.
Yeah, neither.
Yeah, I don't know.
Bhante, can we ask a question from last week?
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Is that actually not directly related to the text from last week?
Yeah, go ahead.
But last week you mentioned the metta meditation and talked about the formulas, the specific ways to practice metta meditation. And I've always wondered, number one is metta meditation, as well as the other, I wouldn't say the last of the four abodes, divine abodes,
Yeah.
but maybe the first three. I always feel that those first three should be the meditation on a imagined object, right? Not on the truths like impermanence, right? And so on the imagined object, my understanding is that the goal is to reach samadhi.
Yeah.
But when we do metta meditation or the meditation on compassion or meditation on loving kindness, it feels like we're trying to imagine an emotion that is not there. At least in my personal case, it's hard for me to keep imagining I have this loving kindness for people, or compassion usually is easier if I keep thinking about somebody in a really bad situation. But normally it's so are we supposed to imagine an emotion and try to arouse that emotion until that emotion becomes ingrained, and then we reach samadhi?
Yeah.
Is that the way to do it?
One is not imagining an emotion, but one takes certain persons who represent certain categories of persons. Okay, like a dear person, a dear and respected person, a very close person, a neutral person, and then one brings that person to mind. There should be a real person, not somebody that one is creating out of one's imagination, but a real person. And then one is generating the wish, may that person be well, may that person be happy. And the words of that formula, while one is mentally bringing to mind, while one is bringing to mind the words of that formula, then one should be directing towards that person the wish that corresponds to the words of the formula. So one should be wishing for that person to be well, wishing for that person to be happy. It's not so much that one is imagining the emotion, but one is, generating the wish for the person to be well, for the person to be happy. And even though initially like often one is not able to generate that wish, naturally and spontaneously, but by going over the words of the formula and understanding the meaning of those words and then directing the mind towards that person, using those words as a way to anchor the mind on that person, then one brings up the emotion that corresponds to those words.
It's just that the method in theory doesn't make sense to me. It could be that I should not practice metta meditation.
No, it's always good to practice the metta meditation.
I would think that I am the kind of person who should practice metta meditation. Knowing my person, I should, but it feels very disingenuous. For example, I never wish Bande to be not well, but I have to be honest. If I heard that Bande has a headache today, I start to feel like I really wish Bande would do better today.
Yeah.
That's very genuine.
Yeah.
But in normal sense, every Bande is fine, is happy, is giving Dharma talk. I don't know why I need to keep wishing you well. You're already well. Right? And then, for example, I actually started practicing compassion because I think that's easier. So I started to look at people surrounding me who I know they are not certain things. Somebody has a cancer scare, or they have something that's sad happening to them. Yeah. So I wish them well. Yeah. But then conditions of the world changed. They became well. Yeah. And then I started looking and I said, should I still continue to wish them that the compassionate feeling goes away? And I kept thinking, okay, I'm supposed to imagine this. Yeah. But it becomes so unreal in the sense that I don't know how I can reach samadhi, keep practicing this. So in theory, I'm having doubts with the method.
One of the things when you wish...
Let Bande answer first.
Wait, did you want to comment on this?
Yeah, just there's two parts to wishing someone well. There's the physical wellness, but there's also the mental wellness, and we're all mentally unwell.
Bande mentally pretty well to me.
No, but there's still, lobha, dosa, moha still there. I'd say that maybe as a starting point, it's useful to focus on specific types of unwellness that people are undergoing in order to generate the wish, may that person be well, or even people, they might seem to be relatively content, but there are levels of happiness beyond what they're experiencing. So you could wish, may this person be completely well, may this person experience higher and higher and deeper happiness, may this person experience the ultimate happiness. So in that way, one could be developing loving kindness. And similarly with compassion, maybe initially one will focus upon the coarser, manifest types of suffering that somebody might be undergoing. But people, virtually all people, except for the very few who have reached levels of attainment, are oppressed by some degree of greed, hatred, and delusion, and other defilements. So one will be wishing, may that person be free from the affliction of defilements. But I'd also say, don't intellectualize it too much and try to argue your way into it, but just do it. Just do it as a practice.
I try. This is my problem. I've reached in practice. It gets to a point I don't know how. The idea is to focus on that.
Yeah.
Whatever that is.
Yeah.
Whether it's emotion, I don't know what it is. I'm trying to focus on that.
Wait, take the microphone.
Because I think we're trying to focus on something.
Yeah.
Right, so that we can reach samadhi.
Yeah.
Just that something. I don't know what that is.
Yeah,
what am I supposed to focus on?
The object of focus is the person as you're imagining that person. And the mode in which you're focusing on that person is through the wish, say for metta, may that person be well, may that person be happy, may that person, what I found to be a useful one to use these days is may the person be safe. Because we hear about so many kinds of tragedies taking place. So just find any expression that works for you. You know, you could experiment with a few phrases. If being well doesn't work, being happy doesn't work, try being, may that person be safe, or may that person be calm in mind. That's too high. I think you have to work at a more everyday level.
Putting pressure on them.
Yeah.
But then again, if I keep reciting something, this is also my meditation teacher say, okay, just keep telling yourself, you need to focus. But then that inner voice becomes annoying. And I kept thinking, should I focus on the image or should I focus on the sound? Either way, it's inside.
On the sound.
Because you keep saying that.
I
May
see.
that person be well, may that person be well.
Oh, I see. You mean on the words of the formula?
Yeah, or the image. If I focus on the image, I can't focus on the
Yeah, what I
word.
say, what I found, this is my own personal experience, that it's not necessary to have a very clear visual image of the person, just enough to have a sense of the presence of that person, that person is being present to consciousness. And so I would say that the main thing is the meaning of the words that one is using, sort of the wish that's implied by those words, whether it be the wish to be for that person to be well, to be happy, to be safe. And then one uses the words, the meaning of the words, to generate the wish, so that you're actually wishing for that person to be well, wishing for that person to be happy, wishing for the person to be safe, wishing for the person to be peaceful.
Are we generating a volition?
You could say that, yeah. Or I would say simply generating a wish. And then that wish, expressed by the words, will bring up the feeling that corresponds to the words. And that is the loving kindness.
Thank you, Bande.
Bhante, one of the things they taught me when I was in Sri Lanka was that metta is threefold: speech, the action, and the thoughts. And when we keep repeating the mantra, we're kind of conditioning the mind to see others. But also, I had a lot of trouble in the beginning with individualizing it. So the teacher said to just do may all beings be happy. And it helped a whole lot, because like when I would try to do to that person, you know, with conflict or whatever, it would kind of generate more unwholesome thoughts at times. So they suggested just do may all beings be happy, may all beings be free from suffering. And that helped a lot with compassion, because when you see an ant, and you realize that ant or a bird, they all have this, every being in this universe has the same two wishes, food and shelter. And then when you realize that they're all wishing for the same thing, want the same thing, then it helps to see things in a very equanimous way, I think. So that helped me a lot. I'm just a suggestion.
Yeah, there are different ways to go about it. I mean, the way, sort of the classical way that's set out in the text like the Visuddhimagga is to begin with individual persons and then gradually generalize the loving kindness till it gets extended to all beings. But some people find it easier to go about starting with all beings. And then once you get some sense of the feeling of loving kindness in that way, then you could go back and then focus on particular people.
When the mind becomes concentrated.
With what?
When it becomes concentrated, it's easier to focus.
Yeah.
But they also said don't visualize that at all. Just think of that person.
Yeah, but I don't know. I find it useful myself at the outset. It's not to attempt to visualize in detail with clearly with precision, but just to get a sense as though that person is, like a few yards in front of you. Because it's when you see the face of the other that the feeling of loving kindness can come up. When it's just an abstract idea, then for me it doesn't work so well.
Bhante, in one of the suttas, the Buddha had said that the object of meditation is not concentration. I think it starts with an A. I can't remember the name of it. I think it's in the Anguttara Nikaya. But then there's samasamadhi. So how is right concentration? How are we supposed to develop right concentration if it's not the object of the meditation?
I don't know a sutta that says...
I believe it's either Anguttara or Samyutta Nikaya. It starts with an A. I can't remember the name of it.
Assaji?
Maybe, yes.
I know that there's a sutta in the Samyutta Nikaya where there's a monk named Assaji who's sick, and then the Buddha comes to visit him,
Mm-hmm.
and the Buddha asks how he's getting along, and then the monk says, I'm feeling very upset because I've been ill, so I'm not able to gain the samadhi that I had before. And then the Buddha says, it's not the case that samadhi is the essence,
Right.
something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Buddha teaches him, I think, contemplation of the 5 aggregates or the 6 sense spaces as being impermanent, dukkha, non-self. But that doesn't mean that samadhi is something to be just dispensed.
No, I didn't. But I mean, it's from the time spent in the meditation hall, samadhi kind of, if we keep doing the bhavana,
Yeah.
the samadhi kind of naturally arises.
Yeah.
It's not like another attachment, another object that we're
Yeah.
aiming to.
Yeah.
Is that what is meant by it, maybe?
By that statement?
By like not grasping to it, or
Well, the Buddha, in the 3 stages of training, there's sila, samadhi, and panya. And so samadhi is a very important part of the training. It's just, I would say, in the case of in that particular incident, because the monk was upset that he couldn't maintain the samadhi. And so for the Buddha, samadhi is basically not a goal in itself. So it's a means to panya. And so the Buddha taught that monk a method of contemplation that didn't rely so much on samadhi, sort of direct contemplation on the 5 aggregates.
thank you.
Okay, so Will, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. I think it's easier. I'm of the opposite opinion in that I think it's easier to start meditation by focusing on one person rather than all beings. Because, and I usually start by focusing on people who I never have conflict with, like you or my grandfather. Because if I start with someone who I conflict with, like my brother, I'll be like, oh, may he be happy, may he be well, and then I'm like, may he stop playing guitar, it's too loud. But I think it's easier almost to start by generating it towards like one specific person who you know and who, because then you can expand it more.
Yeah, that is the
people.
general procedure.
Yeah, okay.
But it's just some people say that they have trouble focusing on individuals. And so what I just say that one has to play it by ear, that there shouldn't be like, we shouldn't think that there are hard and fixed rules in the practice that are applicable to everybody and that you have to stick inflexibly to a fixed procedure, but experiment and then see what works best for oneself. But the general way that's sort of laid down in the meditation manuals is to begin with individuals and to begin with those with whom one has a good relationship.
Yeah.
And then those who create trouble, that comes at the end.
Yeah, well, if...
What is that?
Yeah.
I said you could go on for days at that park.
Okay, any other question? Oh, okay. Well, What is your name, by the way?
We communicated through email from time to time.
Okay. Again?
Hung?
Your name?
Hung, H-U-N-G.
You are Lehung.
Yes.
I thought you were in California.
No. I'm in Connecticut.
I see. Somehow I had the
We
impression...
communicate through email from time to time.
I see. Yeah, I mean, I know your name, but I don't know where I got the impression that you were living in San Francisco.
No.
Yeah.
So anyway, so just a quick comment about the metta cultivation. I kind of share the same experience as the lady over here. It's like, say, when I encounter some rude person and he's kind of mean to me, it's hard for me to immediately jump to the metta cultivation mode. I find the other mode of contemplation works more effectively. For example, the cultivation of no I, no mine, no myself.
Yeah, yeah.
So when encountering a rude person, I don't see him as Mr. A, Mr. John, Mr. Johnson. I just see it as like an aggregate, and then focus on the feeling. So when he's mean, I don't say Mr. Johnson is mean. I just think to myself, there's anger arising, and it seems to work more effectively instead of having to focusing on the metta aspect.
Yeah, I mean, there are many different methods that one could use. There's not just like one medicine that's applicable for that everybody has to use, but you just have to see which kind of medicine works most effectively.
Thank you.
Is that a hint? Okay, if there are no more questions, then we'll end for the day. Okay, so we'll end with 3 half bows.